Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
In the intellectual firmament of the mid-19th century, comets remained celestial enigmas, objects of both rigorous mathematical prediction and profound physical mystery. Following the triumphant return of the comet bearing Edmund Halley's name, the Newtonian paradigm had successfully caged these apparitions within the elegant mechanics of gravitational law. Their paths were predictable, their appearances calculable, yet the question of their fundamental nature, of their very substance and behaviour, lingered as a captivating puzzle. Astronomers meticulously charted the development of their luminous tails and fluctuating comas, but the underlying physics governing these transformations was a realm of pure speculation. It was into this environment of kinematic certainty and physical ambiguity that the German astrophysicist Johann Karl Friedrich Zöllner ventured with his 1858 treatise, Über die Natur der Kometen, or on the nature of comets. This work stands as a watershed moment, a formidable attempt to drag cometary science from the domain of descriptive astronomy into the nascent and more demanding world of physical science. Zöllner sought to explain what comets are, employing the cutting-edge tools of thermodynamics and electricity to construct a model of breathtaking ambition, a model that, for all its eventual inaccuracies, fundamentally reoriented the trajectory of planetary science. The scientific landscape that Zöllner entered was dominated by two competing schools of thought concerning cometary structure, both of which fell short of a complete physical explanation. On one side was the sandbank hypothesis, which envisioned comets as loose agglomerations of meteoric dust, a diffuse cloud of particles held weakly by gravity. On the other was the concept of a solid nucleus, a more cohesive central body. The behaviour of comet tails, in particular their consistent orientation away from the sun, presented the greatest challenge. The work of Friedrich Wilhelm Bessel, following his intensive study of Halley's comet during its 1835 apparition, was particularly influential. Bessel postulated the existence of a repulsive force emanating from the sun, a force powerful enough to overcome solar gravity and drive particles outward to form the tail. This was a crucial conceptual leap, a move beyond pure gravitational dynamics. However, Bessel offered no concrete physical mechanism for this force. It remained a hypothetical entity, a mathematical convenience required to fit observation. The intellectual stage was thus set for a theorist who could provide a plausible physical agent for this observed repulsion, a challenge Zöllner accepted with pioneering vigour. His approach was to build a comprehensive physical theory from first principles, integrating thermal effects with a novel electrical mechanism to account for the full suite of cometary phenomena. Zöllner's 1858 paper presented a powerful synthesis of observation and physical theory. Its central thesis was that cometary activity is a direct consequence of solar radiation acting upon a solid, volatile nucleus. He argued that as a comet approaches the sun, the increasing heat causes materials on its surface to vaporize or sublimate, transitioning directly from a solid to a gaseous state. This process releases a cloud of gas and dust that forms the coma. This part of his theory was a masterful application of the principles of thermodynamics, linking a comet's observed brightness and size directly to its orbital position and the predictable increase in solar energy flux. Zöllner, a pioneer in the field of astronomical photometry, brought his expertise in measuring the intensity of light to bear on this problem. He analysed how cometary brightness varies with solar distance, using these quantitative data to support his model of a thermally driven outgassing process. This alone represented a significant advance, grounding cometary brightness in a concrete physical process rather than treating it as an arbitrary parameter. The most audacious and ultimately most famous component of the Zöllner model was his proposed mechanism for the repulsive force. Building upon Bessel's idea, Zöllner gave the force a specific identity: electricity. He theorized that the process of violent vaporization at the nucleus generates static electrical charges. The sun, he posited, also possesses a large net electrical charge, which creates a powerful electrostatic field throughout the solar system. The newly liberated, charged particles from the comet would then be repelled by the like charge of the sun, streaming away to form the tail. He imagined the comet as a kind of giant electrical generator, its activity powered by the sun's heat, and its emissions shaped by the sun's electrical field. This was a bold and imaginative leap, an attempt to unify celestial mechanics with the laboratory physics of Coulomb and Ampere. He proposed that the different tail types observed by astronomers could be explained by variations in the size and charge to mass ratio of the ejected particles, allowing for a more nuanced explanation of tail morphology than any previous theory. The model was comprehensive, seeking to explain the comet's nucleus, coma, and tail within a single, coherent physical frame. The immediate reception of Zöllner's work within the astronomical community was one of deep interest mixed with considerable skepticism. The thermodynamic portion of his argument, linking solar heating to outgassing, was broadly seen as a powerful and plausible explanation for the fluctuating brightness and size of the coma. It injected a much-needed element of physical causality into the discussion. His electrical hypothesis, however, faced greater resistance. While ingenious, it rested on the unproven assumption that the sun possessed a massive electrical charge sufficient to exert such a force across vast interplanetary distances. The physics of plasmas and the solar wind were completely unknown, and in the context of mid-19th century electromagnetism, Zöllner's solar field appeared speculative. There was simply no independent evidence for its existence. Nevertheless, the core idea of a solar repulsive force gained significant traction. The Russian astronomer Fyodor Bredikhin, for instance, took Zöllner's conceptual framework and developed a sophisticated mechanical theory of comet tails. Bredikhin classified tails into 3 distinct types based on their curvature, attributing each to a repulsive force of a different magnitude acting on particles of different mass. While Bredikhin remained agnostic about the precise nature of the force, his work was a direct intellectual descendant of the physical reasoning championed by Zöllner. Zöllner had successfully shifted the debate. The question was no longer if a repulsive force exists at its physical nature. The long-term legacy of Zöllner's 1858 paper is a fascinating study in scientific prescience and the winding path of discovery. His central thesis of a repulsive force from the sun shaping comet tails was, in its essence, correct. The mechanism he proposed, static electricity, was incorrect. The true agent of repulsion, the solar wind, a continuous stream of charged particles flowing from the sun's corona, was only conclusively identified a century later, primarily through the work of Ludwig Biermann and Eugene Parker in the 1950s. Biermann, observing the behavior of comet tails, deduced that the sun must be emitting a constant flow of particles at high velocity, a conclusion that provided the correct physical basis for the phenomena Zöllner had sought to explain. Zöllner's electrical theory was a brilliant placeholder, a hypothesis that captured the right effect through the wrong cause. It stands as a testament to the power of a correct physical intuition, even in the absence of a complete theoretical framework. Similarly, his emphasis on a solid, sublimating nucleus laid the essential groundwork for our modern understanding. While other astronomers had considered solid nuclei, Zöllner was among the first to build a detailed physical model of its behavior, describing how solar energy drives the activity we observe. This line of thinking found its ultimate expression in Fred Whipple's 1950 dirty snowball model, which remains the cornerstone of cometary science. Whipple's model, which envisions a comet as a conglomerate of ice and dust that sublimates under solar heating, is the direct intellectual heir to the thermodynamic and physical approach Zöllner pioneered. Zöllner provided the foundational concept of a physically active, sublimating body, a concept Whipple later refined with decades of additional observational data and a more advanced understanding of physical chemistry. It is impossible to assess Zöllner's 1858 work without acknowledging the later, tragic trajectory of his career. In his subsequent years, Zöllner's brilliant mind turned toward spiritualism and psychical research, attempting to apply his physical reasoning to phenomena far outside the bounds of testable science. He famously championed the idea of a fourth spatial dimension as an explanation for the feats of spiritualist mediums, a pursuit that severely damaged his scientific reputation and has tended to overshadow his legitimate contributions to astrophysics. There is a certain historical irony that the same intellect that so rigorously applied physics to the heavens would later apply it so fruitlessly to the seance room. His 1858 paper on comets thus represents Zöllner at the apex of his scientific powers, a moment of profound clarity and insight before his descent into speculative metaphysics. It is a monument to a mind pushing the very limits of established physics to illuminate the darkness of space, providing a framework that, while flawed, was robust enough to guide scientific inquiry for generations. In conclusion, Johann Karl Friedrich Zöllner's Über die Natur der Kometen was a work of rare transformative power. It arrived at a moment when cometary science was rich in observation but poor in physical explanation. With intellectual force and creative insight, Zöllner constructed the first truly physical model of a comet, uniting thermodynamics, photometry, and a bold new electrical theory to explain the behavior of these transient bodies. He supplanted purely descriptive accounts with a model of physical cause and effect, arguing that a comet is a dynamic object whose form and brightness are governed by the laws of physics under the influence of the sun. While his specific mechanism for tail formation proved to be a brilliant but incorrect conjecture, his fundamental insights were profoundly prescient. The concepts of a solar repulsive force and a sublimating solid nucleus became the twin pillars upon which all subsequent cometary theory was built. The paper stands as a landmark in the history of astrophysics, a demonstration that even an imperfect physical model can be vastly more fruitful than a perfect description, for it is in the search for physical causes that true understanding begins. Zöllner took the comet, an object of myth and portent, and recast it as an object of physics, a dirty snowball waiting to be understood, setting it on the path that leads directly to the sophisticated inquiries of our own time.
We really appreciate you tuning in to this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.